I didn't know it then, but that one wrong text was the only thing standing between me and losing everything. My home, my future, maybe even my baby. The rain that night was loud enough to drown out everything else. I stood under the bus shelter, holding my phone, trying to look okay, but I wasn't. There's a kind of fear that doesn't show right away. It just sits in your chest and tightens slowly. That's exactly how it felt. I had just left the hospital. The papers in my bag didn't weigh much, but they felt impossible to carry. Bed rest, no work, no stress. Or I could lose the baby. The words kept repeating in my head like I couldn't shut them off. A year ago, I had a plan. I worked at Hayes Medical Group, just administrative support, nothing special, but it was stable. I kept telling myself that if I stayed consistent, I'd get into nursing school and build something better. It wasn't a big dream, but it was enough to keep me going. Now I was standing there, counting what little money I had left, realizing it wouldn't even get me through the next week. Rent was coming, and I already knew I couldn't cover it. I texted Sarah without thinking too much, because if I had, I probably wouldn't have sent it. I just got out of the hospital. I can't work anymore. I might lose my place next week. Can I stay with you for a while? I hesitated before hitting send. Asking for help like that makes everything feel real in a way you're not ready for. When it said delivered, I exhaled, but it didn't feel like relief. It felt like waiting for something I wasn't sure I could handle. The last bus pulled up. I got on, paid with what little I had left, and sat down. My hands were cold, and I couldn't even tell if it was from the rain or the stress. All I could think was, what happens when I run out of options? What I didn't realize was that I had typed the number wrong, just one digit. And somehow, that small mistake reached someone I never expected. Across the city, Daniel Hayes was still at work. To me, he had always just been the CEO, the name at the bottom of emails, someone important, but far removed from my life. He later told me he almost ignored the message. He usually did. That number was private, and random texts weren't something he paid attention to. But something about this one felt different. He read it twice. He said it didn't sound like someone complaining. It sounded like someone who had already tried everything and was about to run out of time. So instead of ignoring it, he replied, I think you may have the wrong number, but I saw you mention Hayes Medical. This is Daniel Hayes. If you used to work here and you're dealing with something serious, I might be able to help. I was already on the bus when my phone buzzed again. I thought it was Sarah, and for a second I felt a little less alone. Then I opened the message, and everything dropped. My hands went still. I read it again just to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. It was him, the CEO, the man I had only ever seen from a distance. Out of all the numbers in the world, how did I end up texting him? I tried to reply, but my fingers wouldn't stay steady. I typed something, deleted it, started again. Nothing felt right. Eventually, I sent a short message. I'm so sorry. This is Emily Carter. I worked in admin last year. The message wasn't meant for you. Please ignore it. I thought that would be the end of it. Honestly, I hoped it would, because explaining how bad things had gotten felt harder than just disappearing. But he didn't ignore it. He replied again, calm and direct. No need to apologize. If you're dealing with medical issues and financial hardship, there may still be support available. Would you be comfortable sharing more? By the time I got home, my apartment didn't feel like home anymore. It felt temporary, like something already slipping away. I stood there for a moment, keys still in my hand, looking around, trying to figure out what I was about to lose first. Part of me wanted to say no, to keep at least a little control. But then I placed my hand on my stomach, and everything shifted, because it wasn't just about me anymore. So I told him everything, about leaving Hayes Medical, about working at the hospital, about the pregnancy, about the complications, about losing my income, and possibly losing my home. And the part that scared me the most was realizing I had no backup plan left. After I sent the message, there was a pause, long enough for doubt to creep back in. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I said too much. Then things started moving, faster than I expected, because he didn't just read my message. He chose to step in, and I had no idea that one wrong text was about to change everything that came next. I woke up feeling like something wasn't right. Not pain, not exactly, just that quiet sense that everything had shifted while I was unconscious. "You're awake," a man's voice said. "Calm, controlled." I turned my head, and for a second I genuinely thought I was still dreaming. Daniel Hayes was sitting next to my hospital bed, laptop open, dressed like he had just walked out of a meeting, completely out of place in a room that smelled like antiseptic and quiet worry. "Mr. Hayes," my voice came out dry. "What are you doing here?" He closed his laptop, like this didn't require explanation. "The hospital contacted me last night. They found my card in your wallet and couldn't reach your emergency contact." He paused, studying me for a moment. "How are you feeling?" My hand moved to my stomach before I could think. "The baby's okay," I said. "That's what they told me." But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't the part keeping me up at night. "They're more concerned about your blood pressure," he said quietly, "and your living situation." That last part hit harder than anything else. Of all people, he was the one seeing this version of me. "I'm sorry they called you," I said, forcing myself to sit a little straighter. "I'll figure something out." He didn't interrupt, didn't question it, just looked at me long enough that pretending started to feel pointless. "I spoke with Dr. Collins," he said finally. "You'll need at least 2 months of full rest, proper care, monitoring." 2 months. I didn't even have a plan for next week. "The medical support can be arranged," he continued, "but that doesn't solve where you're going to stay." "I'll call Sarah again," I said quickly. Her phone was probably off. Right then, my phone rang. For a second, I felt something close to relief. He stood up without a word and stepped outside to give me space. I answered, and less than a minute later, I already knew. When he came back in, I was staring out the window. "She can't help," I said quietly. "Her mom's moving in. There's no room." Saying it out loud made it feel final in a way I wasn't ready for, but I still looked at him. "I'll figure it out," I said. "I always do." Even I could hear it. It didn't sound the same anymore. "I have another option," he said. That made me pause. "There's a company apartment near the hospital. It's furnished. No one's using it right now." I shook my head almost immediately. "I can't accept that." "It's not about charity," he said calmly. "It's a practical decision. You invested in building a future. That still matters." I held his gaze. "You expect me to come back after?" "Our medical division could use someone like you," he said. It made sense. Too much sense. And somehow, that made it harder to accept. Before I could respond, Dr. Collins walked in. Efficient, direct, already checking my vitals. "Your blood pressure is still elevated. You're staying another night," she said. Then she looked at him. "You're arranging housing?" "Yes, a company unit nearby." She nodded. "She'll need regular monitoring, someone checking in." "I've already arranged that," he said, just like that. Like everything in my life could be handled with a few decisions. Yesterday, I didn't know where I'd sleep next week. Now, everything was shifting too fast to process. "Why are you doing this?" I asked after she left. Not the polite answer. The real one. He didn't respond right away, and for the first time, he didn't look like someone who had everything figured out. "I know what it feels like to handle things alone," he said quietly. "And no one should have to do that, especially not when they're responsible for someone else, too." His eyes flicked down to my stomach for just a second. That moment didn't feel like business, and I didn't realize it yet. But something had already changed. I thought things were finally starting to settle, and maybe that's why I didn't see it coming. Because just when I began to feel safe again, my past found a way back in. 3 weeks after moving into the apartment Daniel arranged, my life looked stable on the surface. Clean space, quiet mornings, everything in place. But it still didn't feel like mine. At night, I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, counting how many days I could survive if all of this suddenly disappeared. That feeling never really left. I tried to make the place feel real. A pillow, a plant, a few photos, small things, just to remind myself I wasn't completely drifting. Most days, I stayed on the couch with my laptop, forcing myself to keep up with coursework. Like if I stopped, everything else would fall apart too. Maggie came every morning, checked my vitals, brought groceries. Sometimes she'd stay a little longer, just talking about normal things. Those moments mattered more than I expected. But what I didn't expect was Daniel. I thought he'd step away once everything was arranged. He didn't. He texted every day. Simple things. Did you eat? How are you feeling? And twice a week, he showed up with food. Always something I liked. Even things I forgot I had mentioned. That night, I was studying when I heard a knock. Maggie had a key, so I already knew. "Come in," I said, closing my laptop, suddenly aware of my bare feet and how small I looked in that room. Daniel walked in, holding takeout. "I might have ordered too much," he said casually. "I doubt it," I said, pushing myself up slowly. My back stiff, my body heavier than it should have been. We had fallen into a rhythm. He unpacked the food, I set the table, and those short visits had quietly turned into long dinners, conversations that went further than either of us expected. I learned about his mother, about how he built everything from nothing. And I told him pieces of my life too, but not all of it. There was still one part I kept hidden, and the longer we sat across from each other like that, the harder it became to keep it that way. "I spoke with HR today," he said. "They're putting together a plan for you. Flexible hours, you can keep studying." I set my fork down. "Daniel, I need to understand something." He looked up. "What?" "You've done more than anyone would. The apartment, the care, everything." I held his gaze. "Why?" He didn't answer right away. And for the first time, he didn't look completely certain. "At first, it was just responsibility." He paused. "Now, it's not just that. What is it then?" He didn't look away. "I like being here." A small pause. "With you." That landed harder than I expected. And right then, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen, and my chest tightened instantly. "I need to take this." I walked into the bedroom, closing the door, but my voice came out sharper than I meant. "I told you not to contact me." "No, you don't get to show up now." That wasn't the agreement. My hands were shaking by the time I ended the call. When I stepped back out, everything felt different. "Is something wrong?" he asked. "Just someone from my past," I said, too quickly. "Nothing important." But even I didn't believe that. The silence between us wasn't the same anymore. "I should go," he said quietly. I reached out before I could stop myself. "Thank you for everything." My fingers lingered for a second longer than they should have. After he left, I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at my phone. The next morning, it buzzed again. Same number. One message. "We need to talk about the baby. Riverside Park, 2 p.m. If you don't come, I will." My stomach dropped. He knew where I was. After disappearing, after making it clear he wanted nothing to do with this, now he was back. My hands were still shaking when I called Maggie. "Can you come earlier today?" When she arrived, I forced my voice to stay steady. "Can you take me somewhere this afternoon?" She frowned. "Where?" I hesitated, then said it. "Riverside Park." And deep down, I already knew. This wasn't just a conversation. This was the moment. Everything I tried to hide. was about to catch up with me. I knew the moment Maggie agreed to drive me, I was already stepping into something I couldn't control anymore. The whole ride, I kept my hands pressed together in my lap, trying to steady the shaking, telling myself it would be quick. Just talk, just end it. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't be that simple. When we got to the park, I didn't get out right away. I stayed in the car, scanning the area near the fountain, my heart beating harder with every second. And then I saw him, Daniel Reed, same jacket, same posture, like nothing about him had changed. 6 months, and he looked exactly the same. Like he hadn't disappeared, like he hadn't walked away from everything. Wait here, I told Maggie, my voice tighter than I wanted. Getting out of the car felt harder than it should have, my body slower, heavier, my breath uneven. As I walked toward him, he smiled, that same smile I used to believe in. Becky, he said. I stopped. That name alone was enough to bring everything back. What do you want? I asked, my voice cold, steady. His eyes dropped to my stomach. So it's real. Something in me tightened. I've been thinking, he said casually, like we were catching up. Maybe I handled things too fast before. That's my child too. I have rights. I almost laughed. Rights? I said quietly. You told me to deal with it, and then you disappeared. He shrugged. People change. Then his tone shifted, just slightly. I heard you're doing pretty well now. Nice place. Support from your old boss. I felt it immediately. The implication. The disgust hit before the anger did. You think I'm being taken care of, and now you want in? I'm just saying, he smirked. If there is money involved, we should all think about what's best for the baby. Before I could answer, I heard a voice behind me. I thought I'd find you here. Everything inside me dropped again. I turned. Daniel Hayes was standing there, a few steps away, calm, unreadable. And in that moment, I didn't know what scared me more, that he was here, or how much he might have heard. Daniel, I breathed. How did you— Maggie called me, he said simply, his eyes never leaving the man in front of me. Now Daniel Reed straightened, sizing him up. So you're the CEO. Then he said it, just like that. I'm Daniel Reed, the father. The words hit like something physical. I closed my eyes for a second. This was exactly what I didn't want. Not like this. Not in front of him. I believe she was just leaving with me, Daniel Hayes said calmly, extending his hand. Reed didn't take it. We're having a private conversation about our child. No, we're not, I said quickly, my voice sharper now. There's nothing to discuss. Reed stepped closer. Things change, especially when situations improve. Before he could move any further, Daniel Hayes stepped in between us, not aggressively, just enough. She needs to leave, he said, voice controlled. Her doctor has restricted her activity. Reed laughed softly. Doctor? Legal? Interesting words? Then his eyes shifted, colder now. I wonder what your board would think, seeing you this involved, with a former employee, carrying another man's child. Everything around me blurred for a second. My head felt light. This was exactly what I wasn't supposed to go through. Daniel, I whispered, my voice breaking, I need to leave. He didn't hesitate. His arm came around me, steady, firm, grounding me. The car's right there, he said quietly. As we turned away, Reed called out, This isn't over. I have rights, unless we can come to some kind of arrangement. Daniel Hayes stopped, turned back, and for the first time, there was no calm in his eyes. Be very careful what you do next, he said, his voice low, precise. I'm not someone you threaten, especially not when you've already walked away from your responsibilities. In the car, everything I had been holding in broke. I'm sorry, I said, tears I couldn't stop anymore. I should have told you everything. You don't owe me your past, he said quietly. But I shook my head. I do, after everything you've done. My voice trembled. We met last year, at a fundraiser. He was different then. Or I thought he was. When I told him about the baby, he laughed, said he had another opportunity. I never thought I'd see him again. And now he's back because he thinks there's something to gain, Daniel said, his grip on the steering wheel tightening. He doesn't stop when he wants something, I said. He pushes, threatens, until he gets it. Silence filled the car after that, not empty, just heavy. Then he spoke again, slower this time. Emily, I need to ask you something. He paused, and I need you to be completely honest with me. The way he asked that question, it didn't sound casual. It felt like he already knew the answer. Is there any reason, at all, I should be worried about your safety, or the baby's, with him involved? For a second, I couldn't breathe, because everything I had been trying to keep buried came back at once. The sound of glass hitting the wall, the way his hand grabbed my arm too tight, the look in his eyes when he lost control. I had never said any of that out loud, to anyone, not even to myself. And now, I couldn't pretend it didn't matter anymore. Yes, I said, my voice barely holding. There is something shifted in Daniel Hayes the moment I said it. Not shock, not hesitation, just certainty. Then we need a plan, he said quietly. And this time, you're not handling it alone. Those words, they should have made me feel safe. But all I could think was, why didn't I tell someone sooner? The next 2 weeks blurred together. Meetings, calls, paperwork. Daniel arranged for me to meet a lawyer, Victoria Chang. We went over everything. What Daniel Reed had done, what he said, what he might do next. Every detail I had tried to forget. We don't have to file anything yet, Victoria said. But having it ready gives you control. Control. That was something I hadn't felt in a long time. Daniel also made changes I didn't fully notice at first. More security at the building. Someone always at the entrance. It was explained as a new policy, but I knew it wasn't just for everyone. It was for me. Still, Daniel Reed didn't stop. His messages kept coming. Some days, he acted like nothing had happened. Other days, he threatened. And sometimes, he talked about money. I didn't reply to any of them, but my body reacted anyway. My blood pressure stayed high. Sleep didn't come easy. And even when it didn't last long. That Thursday evening, I needed something normal, anything that didn't feel like fear. So I tried to hang curtains in the nursery, standing on a step stool, knowing I shouldn't be, but needing to feel like I still had some control. What are you doing? His voice came from behind me. I turned. Daniel Hayes was already moving toward me, taking the stool away. I just needed to do something normal, I admitted. He didn't argue, just guided me back to the couch. I watched him look around the room, the crib, the small clothes I had folded, the space I was trying to turn into something real. I'll finish it later, he said, like it was obvious he would. During dinner, I noticed something was off. He kept checking his phone, answering shortly, not like before. Is something wrong? I asked. He hesitated, then finally said it. The board has started asking questions about my involvement here. My chest tightened instantly. He contacted them, didn't he? Not directly, he said, but he spoke to Harold Winters, and he made sure they heard his version of things. I didn't need him to explain more. I already knew what that meant. Blackmail, I said quietly. The word felt heavy, and somehow it felt like my fault. I shouldn't have accepted your help, I said, pushing myself up. Maybe if I just talked to him. No. His voice stopped me immediately. That's exactly what he wants, to isolate you. to make you feel like you have no choice. He reached across the table, his hand closing around mine. Emily, I can handle the board. His grip tightened slightly. What I can't accept is leaving you and your child exposed to someone like him. Something in his voice. It wasn't just responsibility anymore. And I felt it, even if neither of us said it out loud. What happens now? I asked. I'll meet with them tomorrow. Before he could finish, his phone rang. He stepped aside to answer. I watched his expression change. Annoyance, then concern, then something colder. When he came back, I already knew. He showed up at the office today, Daniel said, demanding to see me, making a scene when security refused. I felt my stomach drop. He told people the company was helping you hide his child. The room went quiet, and for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everything around us, and it was only getting worse. I felt it before I could fully understand it, a tightening low in my stomach that didn't seem serious at first. I told myself it was nothing because I had felt something like it before. But this time it didn't fade. It came back, stronger, closer together, and with every wave, something inside me kept saying this wasn't normal. By midnight I couldn't ignore it anymore. Something was wrong. My hands were shaking as I called the doctor's line, trying to explain between breaths. They didn't hesitate. They told me to go to the hospital immediately. After I hung up, I just sat there for a moment, looking around the room I had only just started to feel safe in, and realizing I might not come back the same. I called an ambulance, then texted Daniel Hayes. I'm heading to the hospital. Contractions. Something's wrong. The ride felt both too fast and too slow at the same time. Lights flashing, noise building, pain getting harder to manage. Everything blurred together. When I arrived, the emergency room was chaotic. People everywhere, voices overlapping. No space to think. A nurse checked me quickly, then her expression changed. The second she saw my blood pressure too high, dangerously high, they moved me immediately without waiting. Everything after that happened in fragments. Bright lights, urgent voices, hands moving around me. Doctor, Collins appeared, her face serious. She told me the baby was in distress and my condition was critical. I felt my chest tighten as she said they needed to operate immediately. I tried to say it was too early, that I wasn't ready. But she looked at me and said, we didn't have a choice. And in that moment I understood this wasn't about being ready anymore. It was about surviving. As they wheeled me down the Rio hallway, I kept thinking about one thing. Did anyone call Daniel Hayes? I couldn't explain why, but he was the one person I needed there, more than anyone. The last thing I remember was the ceiling lights passing above me, and the fear that I might not see my baby, or him, again. When I woke up, everything felt heavy. My body, my breathing, even my thoughts. I didn't know if it was over or just beginning. Then I heard it, a small sound, weak but real. My baby, alive. Later he told me what happened, how he got the call while driving, how his hands tightened on the steering wheel, how he kept thinking he might be too late. By the time he arrived, I was already in surgery, and all he could do was wait. When the doctor came out, she told him I was stable, but the baby, a little girl, small, fighting, that word stayed with him, fighting, when he was finally allowed inside. Everything changed again because Daniel Reed was already there, loud, angry, demanding to see his child. His voice cut through the hospital like it didn't belong there. And even in that state, I could feel fear coming back. Not for me, for her. But when Daniel Hayes stepped forward, calm and steady, something inside me finally let go. He didn't raise his voice, didn't argue, just stood there and handled it. Not for himself, but for us. And later, when everything went quiet again, I lay there, barely able to move, still awake, still here, and for the first time, I understood. This wasn't just something to get through anymore. This was only the beginning. When I woke up, I didn't immediately realize what had happened. It felt like my body was still catching up, heavy, slow, like I had been pulled back from somewhere I wasn't sure I could return from. I remember lying there for a few seconds, just trying to breathe normally again, before the thought hit me all at once. My baby! I turned my head and saw Daniel Hayes sitting beside me, and the first thing I asked, without even thinking, was whether I could see her, and when I said, "My daughter," it felt strange, almost unreal, like I was still trying to believe she was actually here, alive. He took my hand, steady, like he always was, and told me she was okay, that he had seen her through the glass, that she was small but strong. And for a moment, that was enough to let me breathe again. Then I remembered something else, something that tightened everything in my chest. I told him Daniel Reed had been there, that I heard his voice. And even though Daniel Hayes told me he was gone, I could tell by the way he said it that the situation wasn't really over. Not yet. I didn't have the strength to think about it for long. I was too tired, not just physically, but from everything leading up to that moment. I told him I didn't want this kind of life, that I had only wanted something simple and safe for my child, and that I felt like I had dragged him into something he didn't deserve to be part of. But he stopped me right there and said something I didn't expect. He said he chose to be there, that none of this was forced on him, and I believed him. Then he paused for a moment, like he was deciding whether to say something or keep it to himself, and then he told me he wanted to stay, not just to help, not just because of the situation, but because he cared about me. And then he said it clearly, without hesitation, that he had fallen in love with me. I didn't know what to say, not because I didn't feel anything, but because everything in my life was already so complicated that I didn't know where that fit. I told him the timing was wrong, and he didn't argue. He just said he didn't need an answer right now, that he only wanted me to know where he stood. A few days later, I finally got to hold my daughter for the first time. She was smaller than I imagined, lighter than I expected, and for a second I was scared I might break her just by holding her. But then she wrapped her tiny fingers around mine, and something in me settled. I named her Hope, not because everything was suddenly okay, but because I needed something to hold on to. A month later, we brought her home, and that place that once felt temporary started to feel real, not because anything about it changed, but because I did. Daniel Reed didn't disappear completely, but he stopped controlling everything the way he used to. And as for me and Daniel Hayes, we didn't rush anything. We didn't try to define it too quickly. We just stayed, showed up for each other, one day at a time. A year after that message I never meant to send, we sat across from each other at a small restaurant that had quietly become ours, and for the first time in a long time, everything felt calm. He said, one wrong message had changed everything, and I realized he was right. And if there's anything I've learned from all of this, it's not that life suddenly becomes easier. It doesn't. Things still go wrong, people still leave, and sometimes you're forced into situations you never prepared for. But what actually makes the difference isn't whether everything goes right, it's whether you have to go through it alone. Because the hardest part isn't always the problem itself, it's carrying it by yourself for too long, and the right person doesn't show up to fix your life. They just stay long enough so you don't have to face it alone anymore. This story is inspired by real-life situations and has been adapted for storytelling purposes, with details recreated to protect privacy and deliver a clearer message. If you saw a part of yourself in this story, you can leave a comment. Sometimes saying something out loud helps more than you think. And If you want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe because the next story might be the one you needed to hear.